It's fantastic, honestly. I honestly commend you massively, because unfortunately, not everyone out there is a conscious, active truth seeker, and none of these conclusions that you've had were sort of laid out to you on a plate. You're a thinking guy that's searching and coming towards answers through your own intuition, and so I just want to commend you massively. I thought it'd also just be uh, an idea just for me to share with you just a few reflections I've had as someone that it sounds like I'm a little bit a few years on the similar journey to what you've had. Just a few reflections that I have looking back on the last few years of this Jewish journey. Just perhaps a few words of advice
That would
that I'd
be
say.
very much valued. Thank you.
Well, what I'd say is number one is, and I'm sure I've no doubt that you probably already embody a lot of these principles, but just to share them anyway. The first one would be not to reject your past. God gives you the family, the background, and the situation that He put you in. He needed you to be there. He needs you to be there. He doesn't want you to. We don't believe in this whole born again thing. You know, how you're raised, the situation you find yourself in. We're not meant to reject it. We're meant to elevate everything around us. Number two, balance is a Jewish principle. The Rambam talks about this. He says, except for anger, it's important. That's the way the world. Sorry, that's the way that God made the world. If you cook something on a stove for not long enough, it's raw. For too much, then it's burned. Everything has to be in balance for it to be right. I don't believe that we should do things in extremes. Balance is something that's holy, and it's. I always said, for example, with like keeping kosher, with let's say friends or family that aren't as much like. Let's say they have a house that it might be problematic or going out. I always said it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how. We'll find a way to make it work so that we can share joyous occasions together, socialize together. There's always ways to make it work. And so too with the matter of balance, I think growth should always be slow and paced out, because that is sustainable. It took us, we're in the Omer right now, it took us 49 days to get to Mount Sinai. We didn't just rush there, and even then we crashed immediately afterwards. So growth, sustainable growth, like a relationship, you have to take your time to build. And so people that just rush into things and big changes, like anything in life, dieting, whatever it is, that's not the way. And I don't think it's the Jewish way. And we're not about all or nothing. We're about where are you at right now in your life, and how can you just do that little bit more. I think that's all God really asks of us and expects of us. You've already touched on this, but the importance of embracing the world. I think especially now that the world is no longer as hostile to Jews as they were in the past, we have a chance not just to be more out there and engage in the world, but the world is yearning for a moral voice, for clarity, and we can now be that. And so I think if you read the Torah with an objective eye, the Torah, the kind of Judaism that the Torah aspires to, for us to keep, is one that is engaged with the world. Sometimes circumstances of our national situations meant that we can't, but I think we're not encouraged to hide from the world. We're meant to try and go out there and change it. I think about the greatest individual narrative we have in the Torah is the story of Joseph, who goes out into the world. The brothers say, let's see, if you think you can go out into the world and elevate it and change it, let's send you down to Egypt, see how you handle that. And look what he does. He's totally vindicated, and maintains his convictions. Another thing I'd say is the importance of questioning everything with boldness, because the truth has no agenda. We should not be intimidated by questions. Isn't that the first Jewish festival of the year, Pesach? We're encouraged to ask questions. That's the kids. That's one of the main points of the Seder meal. Get the kids to ask, because we're truth seekers. Our ancestors were truth seekers. We challenge God and we ask them questions, and so challenge everything, because we shouldn't be afraid of that. Another thing I'd say is don't expect perfection in the religious world. In the same way that, and this is one thing I wish would have been told to me before. We're all human beings. The Torah is full of our great leaders and ancestors making mistakes, and so we shouldn't necessarily just expect, because someone is of a certain denomination or whatever it is, part of a certain world, that means they're perfect. We're all human beings, and all the more so, we should always look to see ways in which things can be improved on and innovated. And the fact that you are, in some ways, have come to some of these conclusions and associations with your Jewish heritage and the observant Jewish world later in life, that in some ways gives you a strength and an upper hand, because it means you can look at things from an outside eye with objectivity and see, what you're needed for, to coin a phrase. So that's just my sort of 2 cents, as they say, from being on a similar journey to you. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that front from your experience to date, but that's.
I'd just like to say thank you so much. That's incredibly invaluable wisdom, and I very much appreciate you giving it to me. I'm gonna make sure I try and remember all of those. Need to write it down.